Hi everyone, and welcome to another tarot video, and this tutorial will be about the Tower. For those of you that haven't seen this card before, it's a little bit more tricky to decipher than the Rider-Waite version, because all the shapes seem to blend in, and it's very much the colour of orange-red, which was the card is ruled by Mars down here. So we've got the Tower here, which is being destroyed by fire. We've got the all-seeing eye, and we've got this like lightning flash going down and ending up in the bottom left corner of the card. And we've got the dove and what's called a lion serpent here, which are two representations of love. So we're going to be talking about those two a fair bit. The other thing in this card is the garrison, or the men inside that have been thrown out of the burning tower, and these are not in the shape of human bodies. They're very much crystalline. Indeed, for those of you that can see or have seen astrally, then that's where we begin to get the development of shape. So this is really just reflecting the fact that as a result of this transition, man is losing his identity and needs to shift it to something else. And so excuse me, so in the losing of that identity, it's like he's losing his field of reference, and so therefore they are less human-like, these men, but we'll go into that in greater detail later. Okay, so we'll just have a quick look at the Rider-Waite card next. A cursory look at the Rider-Waite card will show us that we have a roughly similar theme to the top card. We've got the figures falling out, or being jettisoned out of a tower, and we've got the flames there, which again represents the fiery aspect of Mars. We've got the lightning flash as we had before, and the crown sort of representing the ego there. So we'll go into that in greater detail if we get around to doing a series on the Rider-Waite. In understanding the Thoth card, we can look at its position on the Tree of Life, and it's in between the two Sephira of Hod and Netzach. These are ruled by Mercury here and Venus respectively. And the two represent two very different things. Hod is essentially abstract thinking, and a very simplistic level it represents sort of the intellect, and again very simplistically Netzach is to do with the emotions. So we've got this like tension between opposites again, which is, you know, a recurring theme throughout the progression of the Fool, because all opposites are in fact wanting to dissolve into a unity, so there's always going to be a tension there. It's not a bad thing at all. Something to bear in mind is that on the two levels above, we've got the Empress on the path here between Bina and Hokmar, and we've got the Lust card between Geber and Hesed. And like I said in the introductory section, we're going to be talking about this lion, serpent and dove here, these two aspects of love. And these are represented in the Empress. We've got, or one is, we've got the dove here in the top right hand corner, and in the Lust card we've got this lion serpent here. And these are represented here. We've got the dove here on the left and this lion serpent here on the right. So this card, the Tower, is connected to these two cards in both its symbolism and position on the Tree of Life there. So As I've indicated there on my little diagram, we've got the dove representing Venus and the Empress, we've got the lion serpent in the Lust card, and the Tower is like a combination of both of those. So with it being quite low on the tree of life, the Tower is really like a battlefield of this tension between opposites, which is probably why we get quite a violent sort of reaction in this card, because it's like we're being forced out of the position that we are occupying in our tower, in our little life, and we're sort of being jettisoned from it, rather than just asked to leave. And we'll see this play out as we go through the tutorial. So we'll look at the Hebrew association of the card next. The Hebrew association of this card is Pe, although it is actually spelled P-E with an apostrophe over the E, and it means mouth. So if we look at the card, this is like the mouth of a dragon at the bottom here, and Crowley does identify this as Dis, D-I-S, which is another name for Hades, which is the Roman god of the underworld. And I guess the reason that he's represented it this way is that the god of the underworld is essentially the god of death, and in this card you have this tension, as I mentioned before, not only between the two Sephira here, between Hod and Netzach, the emotions and the intellect. You've also got this tension between life and death in a way, because you've got the death of the ego, which is where we see the crown lost in the Rider-Waite version, and you've got this new life, and this is this tension that plays out in this card. The astrology of this card is clearly Mars, and that is again a very destructive energy, and yet is also an energy of purification. Fire is known throughout creation in various forms, whether it be a physical fire, the Kundalini fire, the cosmic fire. It's all been written about, but it is a great purifier. So we'll next have a look at the symbolism and how this plays out in the meaning of the card. So we've come to look at the symbolism of this card, and I guess we better start with the Tower itself. As I indicated, it is something which is very rigid. It's also very protective. So we've got this idea of, in a sense, building our own limitations. It's something that encases our ego. It's our ring past naught, in a sense. We do not, or we have a barrier to our expansion of consciousness. So it's our lower consciousness really that is trapped within this tower that needs to be destroyed if the fool needs to move forward. It can represent, the totality of our mental, emotional and sort of physical states of being. And what this card is trying to do is to move us out of that limited consciousness. So in the book of the law, Crowley does talk about two types of love, and he essentially has two symbols which are sort of different manifestations of the same energy. We've got the dove here, and we've got this lion serpent here, and he indicates, and I've got the quote in my article on the website, about the destructive bit being the most potent. I think it comes from the fact, again, you've got this, it's not just a passive thing, it's something in this card which is I think it's certainly the more dominant one in this card. It's because this lion serpent is the most active thing, and we've got all this Mars energy here, so this is what it at this particular stage is doing, all the moving in our consciousness, this active destructive part of love. and he identifies this as Abraxas, which is basically a god of Gnostic Christianity, and he was a god, again, not solely benevolent, but also seen as a destroyer of things. Indeed, if you look at the Bible itself, God's acts are certainly not, especially in the Old Testament, they are certainly not benevolent. It's got, passages about God going into villages and massacring all the children. So again, that is just symbology. It's got nothing to do with the massacre of physical human beings. It's just all it's just basically all symbolic references. So, but again, there's more of that on my website. So he identifies this lion serpent as Abraxas, and I've got a picture of him here. Again, we've got these serpents there. It comes in various different guises, but this one's got the head of a cockerel. It's still Abraxas though. You've got the sun and the moon again. This is this interplay of energy, the moon being feminine, the sun is masculine. So again, tension of opposites there, and you've got the warrior-like disposition of Mars. So these are the dove and the serpent, and why they are there. They're the two different types of love, and I guess it is a reminder that love is behind all of these acts in creation. In fact, it is the thing that binds creation together. We'll go to the Eye of Shiva here, because this is quite definitive at the top here. It's said, when the Eye of Shiva is opened, the universe is destroyed, and it's our limited view of the universe that is destroyed upon enlightenment. And it does relate to things like the opening of the third eye and the revelation of the 1,000-petal lotus. There are also 27 rays coming from this eye, and the 27 rays relate to the position of the tower as the 27th pathway, major pathway on the tree of life. So you've got pathway number 27 here, and the number 27 is illustrated with the rays. A visual representation of Shiva. Shiva was the goddess of destruction, burning one's karma in the fire. Again, that's what we're essentially doing here, burning through some more karma. Just a few additional details now. We've got this lower window of the tower here, which is divided into 10 squares, which is also the number of the 10th Sephiroth, which is Malkut. Here, so that's the foundation, and obviously the tower is our foundations. The upper window has a cross. Again, that represents Malkut with the 4 elements, the fire, water, air and earth, which make up our physical, mental and emotional sort of nature. And so these again are being purified in the fire, and again, Malkut here is represented by earth here with this cross, and that's right down at the bottom of the tree of life, which again we can see here. Again, we've got a cross there, so a bit of hidden symbolism there. It has 5 points to it. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, which is hidden, and the 5th one here, which is hidden. Quite often these are hidden, so you can't easily interpret them, but the 5 points relate to the 5th Sephiroth here, which is Gibora, ruled by Mars. So again, that indicates the active power of Mars in this card. I've talked about the figures already. There's also like a sexual interpretation of this card. Well, there always is. We're talking about sex magic here. Where the tower is the erect penis, the lightning flash, the orgasm, and the figures that are the like ejaculated sperm. So there you go. Wouldn't be a definition of this card without some Crowley sexual antics to throw in. But in fairness, this is also very evident in the Rider-Waite card as well. Right, there's 9 embers of flames from the mouth of Dis here, which represents the 9 Sephiroth, which is ruled by the moon. And Yesod. Yesod is really the element, the energy in the tree of life, which is like the foundation of the tree. It means foundation. And it also represents change and its cycles. So we have it's like an axiom which says change is stability. So in other words, in order to progress, we need to have the flexibility to adapt. So there is a nod to that process going on here. It's like that, if we become as rigid as the tower, then we have to go through this rather say traumatic process. It can be traumatic, this. The moon is also to do with illusion, which again is being destroyed by this removal of the tower there and the jettisoning of the figures here. So I think that's it as far as the symbolism goes. We'll move on to the next section. In this final section, we'll look at the meaning of the tower in terms of divination and its application to a Celtic cross. Generally speaking, for me, if the tower appears upright in a reading, then it's a time of turmoil, destruction. It could be a situation in which you have anger, have things, emotions like anger, grief, depression, not being able to eat or sleep. I mean, this is quite at the raw end of things, and it's a result of being badly shaken up by a life event. It may not be quite as traumatic as that, but it can be. So our little comfort world has gone for the time being. So relevant situations would include relationship breakups, loss of a career, death of a loved one, financial or health problems. So we're looking at the quite acute end of things in terms of life experience. The important message of the Tower card really is that within this destruction there does become a potential for change and purification. This is a bit like the dark night of the soul. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. In reference to the Tower card, we can see it as being in sort of equilibrium between the devil and the star. The devil is all about the connection to the material and the bond and the depth of our bond to the material world. The tower is being like thrust out of that material world, whether it be emotionally, physically, intellectually, whatever. The star, the next card, really puts a bright lining on this because it gives us the potential to express much more harmony and spiritual insight as a result of this process here. But I've put like a arrowhead on both sides of this, because this can really just also traumatize us to the point where we are retreating back into we just go back into the world. So we'll get a trauma and then just not really learn from it, but just sort of store it to one side and just keep it as a trauma, and then just continue on with this ever tightening chain of attachment to the world. So this is quite an important step to thrust onto the much brighter future with the star, and to be able to let go of what and go with the flow of what is happening in this card here. So the lightning flash really of the tower is like a bolt out of the blue. So quite often this situation hasn't been seen in our life, although we might have had clues, because the devil card again is our attachment to the world, and quite often our nature is just to keep on being attached to the world. So along comes the tower card to force us to make these changes. When the tower appears reversed, I know some people will then reverse the meaning of the tower and start putting positives on it, but I can't really subscribe to that. For me, it doesn't feel right. So for me, the tower reversed is more to do with resistance to obvious change. In other words, going back to the devil. It could represent, with Mars being the god of war, fighting and conflict, actual physical fighting and conflict, abuse, physical, emotional abuse, mental abuse, that sort of thing. And the effects of the upright effects lasting over a longer period of time. It could represent staying in a toxic relationship over a period of time, or in a job situation that you feel confined with, and you know, now things are forcing you to act. So it's a much more entrenched position than the upright version of it, also signifying mental and emotional breakdown. With the Celtic cross spread, if the tower appears in the first card, the heart of the matter, it's really just saying that the client's in a difficult situation which has possibly arisen out of the blue, causing a lot of anxiety and causing and forcing a major change in their life. If it's a crossing card, the obstacle, it could indicate not coping with a stressful change in your life, building up stress and anxiety, and not really having the strength to make the change that the tower is really trying to encourage you to make. Unconscious influences, holding on to the past, fear and trauma, which is not being looked at and worked through. Recent past could be a sudden stressful change out of the blue. Stressful life experience could be in a divorce of that for that person, or a loss of a job, loss of a career. Hopes and goals. If the tower appears here, it's a feeling of wanting to overcome those situations that you feel stuck in and that you don't feel as if you have a way out. So in other words, you're recognising that you've got this tower and that it's confining you, the way you're looking at the life, the way your life is, and it's your desire to actually move out of there. So in a sense, that's a good thing, because you're recognising that you've built this this thing which just needs to go. Short-term future, again, change of job, relationship, or material situation. Self-image here, tower appears there, stuck in our own little safe world. Environment, it could actually be okay, but it's just not serving us. It's sort of outdated, it's we've outgrown the usefulness of where we are. But if obviously the tower is reversed there, then that does indicate quite a toxic environment. Number 9 here, really just a need to open your heart and trust in a process of change and going with the flow of life. Otherwise you will get this repeated experience of the tower. And overall outcome, again, learning to go with the flow and letting go of the past. Spiritual growth, as we see, will end on a positive here through overcoming these obstacles, so we can reach out into the brightness and vista that the star gives us. Okay, that's it for now. There's more in the notes on the website, which will be coming up shortly, and hopefully see you in the next video. So hopefully that was a bit of a help. Alright, take care of yourselves and bye for now.